The morning mist clings to the imperial palace grounds like a funeral shroud. It's 6 a.m. on August 7th, 1945, and Tokyo awakens to a world that changed overnight, though most don't know it yet. In a dimly lit briefing room deep within the government complex, Dr. Yoshio Nishina stands before a table scattered with urgent telegrams and radio transcripts. At 55, he carries himself with the quiet authority of Japan's most respected nuclear physicist. His weathered hands, which once built the nation's first cyclotron, now tremble slightly as he reads the impossible reports from Hiroshima. "One bomb," he whispers to himself, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. They claim one bomb destroyed an entire city. Around the mahogany table, military officials in crisp uniforms lean forward with expressions ranging from skepticism to outright dismissal. The Atomic Bomb Countermeasures Committee, representatives from the War, Navy, and Home Ministries, have gathered for one purpose: to debunk what they believe is American propaganda. Professor Nishina, Lieutenant General Seizo Arisue's voice cuts through the morning stillness. "You've spent years studying atomic theory. Tell these gentlemen what you told me yesterday, that atomic weapons remain science fiction." But Nishina doesn't answer immediately. His mind races back to conversations with Niels Bohr in Copenhagen, to calculations scribbled on blackboards at his Riken laboratory, to the bitter realization that Japan's own atomic program, the NIGO project, was still years away from success. He had concluded just months earlier that atomic bombs were theoretically possible, but technically unfeasible with current technology. Yet here, spread across official reports, are descriptions that make his blood run cold. Witnesses speak of a flash brighter than the sun, of a mushroom-shaped cloud rising 40,000 feet into the sky, of destruction unlike anything conventional explosives could achieve. "The Americans are clever propagandists," Admiral Mitsumasa Yonai declares, lighting a cigarette with shaking fingers. "They want us to believe they possess some mythical superweapon." Nishina looks up from the reports, his face pale in the fluorescent light. For a man who has dedicated his life to unlocking the secrets of the atom, this moment carries unbearable weight. If these reports are true, if America has actually succeeded where Japan failed, then everything changes. Not just the war, but the very nature of human conflict. "Gentlemen," Nishina's voice is barely audible, "I must see Hiroshima myself." The room falls silent except for the tick of an antique clock on the wall. Outside, Tokyo continues its morning routine, unaware that one of their greatest scientists is about to embark on a journey that will confirm humanity's entry into the atomic age. What happens when the one man capable of distinguishing scientific fact from fiction discovers that his worst nightmares have become devastating reality? The investigation team assembles like characters in a dark drama, each carrying their own expectations and fears. Lieutenant General Arisue leads the group with military precision, but his confidence masks deep anxiety. Alongside Nishina, 6 other specialists prepare for what they assume will be a routine debunking mission. As their train pulls away from Tokyo Station, Nishina stares out the window at a Japan he barely recognizes. 4 years of war have transformed his homeland into a shadow of its former self. Cities lie in ruins from conventional bombing. Food is scarce. The people move with the weary determination of a nation pushed beyond its limits. But this mission isn't about Japan's suffering. It's about the possibility that suffering has taken an unimaginable new form. "Professor," Major General Nobuji sits across from Nishina, his uniform impeccable despite the chaos around them. "Help me understand your atomic research. You've spent years on the NIGO project. If atomic weapons were possible, wouldn't Japan have built them first?" Nishina's laugh is bitter. "Major, you once asked me why we couldn't simply use 10 kilograms of conventional explosives instead of uranium. You called my atomic research nonsense. The memory hangs between them like smoke. Japan's atomic program had been a study in frustration and limited resources. While Nishina and his team understood the theoretical possibilities, they lacked the massive industrial infrastructure required for uranium enrichment. Their thermal diffusion apparatus at Riken was destroyed by Allied bombing in April, a loss that effectively ended Japan's nuclear ambitions. The Americans have resources we could never dream of, Nishina continues, his voice dropping to a whisper. If they've truly built an atomic bomb, it represents an industrial achievement of staggering proportions. As the train rumbles southward, each mile brings them closer to answers none of them want to find. The other passengers, mostly refugees and military personnel, speak in hushed tones about strange reports from Hiroshima. Communications with the city ceased abruptly yesterday morning. Radio operators received only static, where once there had been constant chatter. Through the window, Nishina watches the landscape change from the familiar suburbs of Tokyo to increasingly rural terrain. The late summer heat shimmers off rice paddies, and farmers pause in their work to watch the train pass. These people have no idea that their nation may have just witnessed the dawn of a new era in human warfare. "Sir," a young aide approaches with a telegram. "Latest reports from our reconnaissance aircraft." Arisu reads the message, his face darkening. They confirm massive destruction, but the pattern is unusual. No crater, no scattered debris field, just a perfect circle of devastation with the most severe damage at the center. Nishina's pulse quickens. This matches theoretical predictions for an atomic blast. The energy released from nuclear fission would create exactly this pattern. Unlike conventional explosives that detonate on impact, creating craters and linear damage, an atomic bomb detonated in the air would produce a sphere of destruction. The train begins to slow as they approach the Hiroshima region. What should be a bustling approach to a major city reveals itself as an eerie void. No smoke from factory chimneys, no movement on parallel tracks, no radio chatter from the locomotive. Then the smell hits them. It seeps through the train windows despite their being closed. An acrid electrical odor unlike anything Nishina has experienced. It's not the familiar stench of conventional explosives or burning wood. This is something new, something that makes his skin crawl with scientific dread. "My God," whispers one of the team members, covering his nose with a handkerchief. As the train rounds a final curve, Hiroshima comes into view, or rather, what remains of it. Where once stood a city of 350,000 people, now stretches a wasteland of flattened debris extending to the horizon. At the center, where the downtown district once bustled with activity, absolutely nothing stands higher than a few feet. Nishina presses his face to the window, his scientific mind automatically cataloging what he sees. The destruction extends in a perfect radius from a central point. Buildings on the periphery lean outward, as if pushed by an enormous force emanating from the center. Most telling of all, there are no bomb craters, just the characteristic pattern of an aerial burst. "Professor," Arisu's voice is barely controlled, is this what an atomic explosion would look like?" Nishina cannot speak. His throat constricts as the implications crash over him like a tsunami. If this is an atomic bomb, then America has not only achieved nuclear fission, they've weaponized it with devastating efficiency. The theoretical has become horrifyingly real. As the train shudders to a stop at what remains of Hiroshima Station, Nishina realizes that everything he thought he knew about nuclear physics, about warfare, about the future of humanity, is about to be rewritten. The investigation that will confirm Japan's worst fears is about to begin. August 8, 1945, 7:30 a.m. The investigation team stands at the edge of Ground Zero, and the silence is deafening. Nishina has witnessed destruction before. the aftermath of conventional bombing raids, the rubble of cities torn apart by incendiary attacks. But this is different. This is the landscape of a scientific nightmare made real. He pulls his Geiger counter from its protective case, hands steady despite the magnitude of what he's about to discover. The device, one of only a few in Japan, will provide the definitive answer to the question that has haunted him since yesterday morning. Click, 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 click. The radiation readings climb steadily as they move toward the hypocenter. This isn't the background radiation naturally present in the environment. This is the signature of nuclear fission, proof that atomic nuclei have been split apart, releasing energy that defies conventional understanding. Sir, one of his assistants points toward what remains of Dr. Shima's clinic, now just a shadow of twisted metal. The damage patterns here, they're unlike anything we've documented. Nishina approaches methodically, his scientific training overriding the emotional shock. He measures temperatures, examines blast patterns, documents the curious absence of crater damage that would indicate a conventional explosion. Every piece of evidence points to the same impossible conclusion. The buildings haven't been blown apart. They've been vaporized. Steel beams twist in directions that suggest forces far beyond any explosive device Japan has encountered. Glass has melted and reformed into strange, flowing shapes. Most disturbing of all are the shadows. Human silhouettes burned permanently into concrete walls, marking the final moments of lives ended by forces beyond imagination. Professor Nishina, General Arisue's voice carries a tremor that wasn't there yesterday. What are your preliminary findings? Nishina kneels beside a section of concrete where the shadow of a woman carrying a child is etched in stark relief. The mother had been walking to work when the flash occurred. In one instant, temperatures reached 6,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to vaporize human tissue while leaving shadows as permanent reminders of their existence. His hands shake as he takes measurements. The Geiger counter confirms what his heart already knows: residual radiation levels consistent with nuclear fission. The Americans haven't just built an atomic bomb, they've perfected it beyond anything Japan's scientists imagined possible. General, Nishina's voice cracks as he speaks, this is the work of nuclear fission. The Americans have successfully weaponized atomic energy. The words hang in the air like a death sentence. Around them, the investigation team falls silent, each man grappling with the implications. Japan's own atomic program, already years behind schedule and crippled by resource shortages, has been rendered obsolete overnight. As they move through the devastation, survivors emerge from makeshift shelters. Their testimonies paint a picture of destruction that defies human comprehension. They speak of a flash brighter than the sun, followed by a heat wave that ignited everything combustible within miles. They describe people simply vanishing, not killed by conventional means, but eliminated so completely that only shadows remain. Nishina interviews a physicist from Hiroshima University who witnessed the explosion from several miles away. Professor, the man whispers, his face bearing radiation burns. I saw the mushroom cloud form. It rose 40,000 feet into the sky, exactly as our theoretical models predicted for an atomic explosion. The weight of confirmation settles on Nishina's shoulders like lead. He thinks of his laboratory at Riken, of the cyclotron he built with such pride, of the years spent pursuing atomic research in the name of scientific advancement. All of it pales before this demonstration of atomic power turned to destructive purpose. That evening, in a damaged building serving as temporary headquarters, Nishina sits alone with a sheet of paper. The official report must be written, but first, he writes a personal letter to a colleague. If the Americans had actually dropped an atomic bomb, it was time those involved in the Japanese bomb program, including himself, should commit harakiri. The words flow from his pen with devastating clarity. This isn't merely professional failure. It's the complete collapse of his worldview. He had spent his career unlocking the secrets of atomic energy, believing that scientific advancement would benefit humanity. Now he confronts the ultimate expression of that knowledge as an instrument of unprecedented destruction. The contemplation of suicide reflects more than personal shame. It represents the psychological devastation of witnessing theoretical physics transformed into mass destruction. Nishina realizes that he, along with atomic scientists worldwide, bears responsibility for opening Pandora's box. As he writes, reports arrive of similar destruction in Nagasaki. A second atomic bomb, dropped just 3 days later, confirms that America possesses not one experimental weapon, but an arsenal of atomic bombs ready for immediate deployment. Their character, he writes in another letter, exceeded the level of our character. This isn't merely about scientific achievement. It's about the willingness to use such devastating power. American scientists had not only solved the technical challenges of nuclear fission, they had overcome the moral obstacles to deploying it against civilian populations. The investigation continues for 3 more days, but Nishina already knows what his final report will conclude. Every measurement, every witness testimony, every piece of physical evidence confirms the unthinkable. America has successfully weaponized atomic energy with devastating efficiency. On August 12th, as he prepares to return to Tokyo, Nishina takes one final look at the ruins of Hiroshima. Where 350,000 people once lived and worked, now stretches a wasteland that will serve as humanity's first glimpse into the atomic age. The theoretical has become terrifyingly real, and the world will never be the same. His official report, delivered to Emperor Hirohito himself, will become one of the crucial factors in Japan's decision to surrender. The man who spent years trying to harness atomic energy for Japan now finds himself delivering the scientific confirmation that ends the war. As their train pulls away from the devastation, Nishina understands that he has witnessed more than military defeat. He has seen the future of human conflict, and it terrifies him beyond measure. The atomic age has begun, confirmed by a Japanese physicist's reluctant testimony to power beyond imagination. Dr. Yoshio Nishina returns to Tokyo a changed man. The confident physicist who left the capital 3 days earlier has been replaced by someone who understands the true cost of scientific achievement. His official report, delivered directly to Emperor Hirohito on August 13th, carries a weight that extends far beyond military intelligence. Your Majesty, Nishina's voice is steady but hollow as he presents his findings to the Japanese leadership. The Americans have successfully weaponized atomic fission. What we witnessed in Hiroshima represents a fundamental shift in the nature of warfare itself. The Emperor listens in silence as Nishina describes radiation measurements, blast patterns, and the systematic vaporization of an entire city. Each technical detail hammers home a single, devastating truth. Japan faces an enemy with unlimited destructive power. Foreign Minister Shigenori Togo later recalls the meeting. When Nishina confirmed that the Americans possessed atomic weapons, the Emperor's face became ashen. We all understood that continuation of the war had become impossible. 3 days later, Nagasaki falls to a second atomic bomb. The message is unmistakable. America doesn't possess one experimental weapon, but an entire arsenal ready for deployment. On August 15th, 1945, Emperor Hirohito announces Japan's surrender, citing a new and most cruel bomb that threatens the total extinction of human civilization. Nishina's scientific confirmation has helped end the bloodiest conflict in human history, but the victory feels hollow. The man who dedicated his life to unlocking atomic secrets now confronts their ultimate expression as instruments of mass destruction. In the months following Japan's surrender, Nishina attempts to rebuild his shattered laboratory at Riken. American occupation forces, recognizing his expertise, initially permit him to continue nuclear research for peaceful purposes. But in November 1945, orders arrive from Washington. All Japanese cyclotrons must be destroyed. Nishina watches in silence as American soldiers dismantle his life's work and dump the pieces into Tokyo Bay. The symbolic destruction of Japan's nuclear capabilities marks the end of one era and the beginning of another, one in which atomic power remains the exclusive domain of its creators. "We opened the door to atomic energy," Nishina writes to a colleague in 1946, "but the Americans walked through first. Now, we must live with the consequences of discoveries we all helped make possible." The psychological toll of his Hiroshima investigation never fully heals. Nishina continues his research in theoretical physics, but colleagues notice a fundamental change in his approach. The enthusiastic pursuit of atomic secrets gives way to cautious consideration of scientific responsibility. When the Soviet Union conducts its first atomic test in 1949, Nishina understands immediately that the nuclear age has entered a new phase. The monopoly that ended World War II has become a competition that could end civilization itself. In his final years, Nishina becomes an advocate for the peaceful application of atomic energy. He helps establish Japan's nuclear research program, focusing exclusively on power generation and medical applications. The man who confirmed humanity's entry into the atomic age dedicates his remaining years to ensuring that nuclear technology serves constructive rather than destructive purposes. Today, as global nuclear tensions rise once again, Nishina's story serves as a sobering reminder of how quickly theoretical possibilities can become devastating realities. The gap between scientific breakthrough and military application proved far shorter than anyone anticipated in 1945. Modern scientists working on artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and quantum computing might consider Nishina's experience as they push the boundaries of human knowledge. The same intellectual curiosity that drives scientific advancement can produce discoveries with consequences beyond imagination. In August 2025, 80 years after Hiroshima, the world possesses over 13,000 nuclear weapons, each far more powerful than the bombs that ended World War II. The atomic age that began with Nishina's reluctant confirmation has evolved into a permanent feature of human existence. Perhaps most troubling is the realization that emerged from Nishina's investigation. America's nuclear secrecy was so effective that even Japan's leading atomic physicist couldn't believe what had become possible. In our current era of classified research and technological competition, what other scientific surprises await discovery? The physicist who had to tell Japan it was all real reminds us that the distance between theoretical possibility and practical application continues to shrink. In 1945, that realization came with the flash of atomic fire over Hiroshima. Today, it may come with developments we haven't yet imagined. Dr. Yoshio Nishina died in 1951, 6 years after confirming humanity's entry into the atomic age. His legacy serves as both a testament to scientific achievement and a warning about the responsibilities that come with unlocking nature's most fundamental secrets. The truth he discovered in Hiroshima's ruins continues to shape our world 8 decades later. Pacific Ocean, May 1943. The steel deck of the USS Essex trembles beneath aviation mechanic Everett Red Landman's boots as he watches the horizon swallow the last traces of American coastline. The 27,000-ton carrier cuts through Pacific swells like a knife through silk, her 4 massive steam turbines pushing her toward a destiny that will reshape naval warfare forever. But 2,000 miles away, in the headquarters of Japan's combined fleet, Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa stares at intelligence reports with the confidence of a man who believes he holds the winning hand. His weathered fingers trace across photographs of American shipyards, those massive Essex-class carriers rolling off production lines like automobiles. 24 of them, the reports say. Ozawa allows himself a thin smile. Let them come, he murmurs to his staff officers. Numbers mean nothing without skill. Ozawa has spent his entire career mastering the art of carrier warfare. His pilots, the legendary naval aviators who stunned the world at Pearl Harbor, represent decades of rigorous training and combat experience. These Americans, with their factory-fresh ships and hastily trained pilots, surely cannot match the precision and dedication of the Imperial Japanese Navy. The morning sun glints off Essex's flight deck as Red Landman secures another F-6F Hellcat fighter, its 50 caliber machine guns loaded and ready. He doesn't know it yet, but he's standing on the weapon that will single-handedly destroy Japanese naval aviation. The Essex-class carriers aren't just ships. They're floating cities of destruction, each one carrying 90 aircraft and 3,000 men into battle. As Essex steams toward her first combat deployment, Ozawa continues planning what he believes will be the decisive battle that saves the Japanese Empire. His strategy is elegant. Use land-based aircraft to weaken the American fleet, then unleash his carrier forces in a coordinated strike that will send these upstart Essex carriers to the bottom of the Pacific. What neither man realizes is that they're about to witness the most lopsided naval aviation battle in history. The Americans aren't just bringing more ships, they're bringing a completely different approach to warfare. While Japanese pilots train for 6 months before combat, American aviators spend 2 years mastering their craft. While Japanese carriers focus on offense over defense, Essex-class ships are armored fortresses designed to survive anything the enemy can throw at them. The question that will haunt Admiral Ozawa for the rest of his life is already forming in the salt spray and diesel fumes of the Pacific. How do you defeat an enemy who can build 24 aircraft carriers in the time it takes you to train a single pilot? Red Landman secures his last aircraft and heads below deck, unaware that he's about to participate in the systematic destruction of Japanese naval power. The Essex is steaming toward a collision with history, and Japan's naval aviation will never recover from the impact. The transformation begins not with battle, but with an industrial revolution that Japan's leaders fundamentally misunderstand. While Admiral Ozawa calculates aircraft numbers and pilot experience, American shipyards are rewriting the rules of naval warfare itself. In Newport News, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Norfolk, and Braintree, the sound of riveting guns echoes 24 hours a day. Each Essex-class carrier requires 2.5 million man-hours to build, but American workers are completing them in as little as 14 months. The USS Yorktown, named after the carrier sunk at Midway, slides down the ways in January 1943. 3 months later, USS Lexington follows. By summer, Essex herself is ready for combat. But Ozawa sees only the surface of this industrial miracle. Intelligence reports cross his desk showing American carriers massing in the Pacific, and he interprets the numbers through the lens of Japanese naval doctrine. Quantity over quality, he tells his staff dismissively. They're rushing these ships into service with inexperienced crews and undertrained pilots. We'll destroy them one by one. What Ozawa doesn't understand, what no Japanese leader fully grasps, is that these aren't just more carriers. They're evolutionary leaps forward in naval technology. Each Essex-class ship displaces 31,300 tons, fully loaded, protected by 4 inches of special treatment steel armor. Their flight decks can handle 2 squadrons spotted for takeoff, while a 3rd squadron warms up on the hangar deck below. Most critically, They carry 240,000 gallons of aviation fuel, enough for extended combat operations that will exhaust Japanese defenses. Red Landman discovers the Essex's capabilities firsthand during her shakedown cruise in March 1943. Standing on the flight deck, as Captain Donald Duncan puts the ship through her paces, he watches F-6F Hellcats launch from steam catapults with bomb loads that would have been impossible on earlier carriers. The new fighters are heavier than Japanese Zeros, but they're also faster, better armored, and equipped with 6 50 caliber machine guns that can shred lightweight Japanese aircraft. These planes are built like tanks, Landman tells his crew chief, running his hand along a Hellcat's reinforced wing. The Japs have never seen anything like this. Meanwhile, in Japanese training facilities, a desperate shortage of experienced instructors forces the Imperial Navy to graduate pilots after just 6 months of preparation. Lieutenant Saburo Sakai, one of Japan's top aces, watches green recruits struggle with basic formation flying and feels a chill of premonition. "These boys aren't ready for combat," he confides to a fellow pilot, "but what choice do we have?" The Americans, by contrast, spend 2 years training each naval aviator. At Pensacola and Corpus Christi, future carrier pilots log hundreds of hours in advanced fighters, learning not just to fly, but to think tactically. They practice carrier landings until they can set down on a pitching deck in any weather. Most importantly, they train against realistic opposition, sparring with instructors who push them to their limits. By August 1943, the disparity becomes clear to anyone willing to see it. Essex launches her first combat mission against Marcus Island, a relatively minor target chosen specifically to test the new carrier's capabilities. The results are devastating for Japanese defenders. Wave after wave of Hellcats and Helldiver bombers pound the island's airfield, destroying every aircraft on the ground and demolishing defensive positions with surgical precision. Admiral Ozawa reads the battle reports from Marcus Island with growing unease. The Americans achieved complete tactical surprise despite Japanese radar warnings. Their pilots flew with a precision and coordination that suggested extensive training. Most troubling of all, they suffered almost no losses while inflicting catastrophic damage on Japanese forces. But Ozawa pushes aside his doubts. Marcus Island was a minor engagement, he tells himself. When the main American fleet ventures within range of Japanese land-based aircraft and carrier forces, the outcome will be very different. His plan remains sound. Lure the Essex carriers into a trap where they'll face coordinated attacks from multiple directions. What Ozawa doesn't know is that American intelligence has broken Japanese naval codes. Every message he sends, every operational plan he develops, lands on Admiral Raymond Spruance's desk within hours. The Americans aren't walking into a trap. They're preparing to spring one of their own. Red Landman feels the tension building as Essex steams toward the Mariana Islands in June 1944. The ship's ready rooms buzz with intelligence briefings about Japanese fleet movements. Pilots study photographs of enemy carriers, memorizing silhouettes and capabilities. In the hangar bay, mechanics work around the clock to ensure every aircraft is combat ready. The morning of June 19, 1944, dawns clear and hot over the Philippine Sea. On Essex's bridge, radar operators track Japanese aircraft formations approaching from the west, massive raids that represent the cream of Admiral Ozawa's remaining pilot strength. This is the moment both sides have been preparing for, the decisive carrier battle that will determine control of the Pacific. Admiral Ozawa stands on his flagship's bridge, watching his aircraft disappear toward the horizon. He's committed everything to this attack, 474 of his best remaining pilots flying against what he believes are inexperienced American defenders. Victory here will cripple the Essex carriers and give Japan breathing room to rebuild her naval forces. Neither Ozawa nor his pilots realize they're flying toward the most lopsided aerial massacre in naval history. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot is about to begin, and Japanese naval aviation will never recover from what happens next. June 19, 1944, 8:30 a.m., Philippine Sea. Admiral Ozawa's voice cuts through the humid morning air on his flagship's bridge. Launch the first raid. 69 Japanese aircraft, fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes lift off from his carriers and form up at 20,000 feet. Ozawa watches them disappear toward the horizon with the satisfaction of a chess master making his opening move. But 150 miles away, Lieutenant Joseph Eggert sits in front of the most advanced radar system in the Pacific Ocean. The USS Lexington's Combat Information Center hums with electronic precision as green blips appear on his scope, a massive formation of incoming aircraft still 90 minutes from contact. "Hey, Rube!" Eggert barks into his microphone, the old circus cry for help. Within minutes, the call echoes across every Essex-class carrier in Task Force 58. Engines roar to life as more than 200 F-6F Hellcats scramble from flight decks, their pilots grim-faced and ready. Red Landman watches from Bunker Hill's hangar deck as fighters streak overhead in perfect formation. These aren't the desperate, hastily trained pilots Admiral Ozawa imagines. They're veterans with 2 years of intensive training, flying aircraft that outclass anything in the Japanese arsenal. The first contact comes 55 miles from the American fleet. Lieutenant Commander Charles Brewer of the Essex locks onto a Japanese formation leader at 800 feet and opens fire. His 50 caliber machine guns tear through the lightweight Zero's fuselage like paper. The Japanese pilot never knows what hit him. His aircraft simply disintegrates in a ball of flame and aluminum debris. Brewer barely has time to register his first kill before lining up a second target. Another burst of gunfire. Another Japanese aircraft spinning toward the ocean. Then a third. Within minutes, he's downed 4 enemy planes while his wingmen account for 3 more. This scene repeats across the sky as American pilots encounter Japanese aviators who simply aren't prepared for the intensity of modern combat. The Japanese formation, which should have maintained tight discipline and coordinated attacks, fragments into individual aircraft trying desperately to reach their targets. Aboard his flagship, Admiral Ozawa receives increasingly frantic radio messages from his pilots. "Heavy fighter opposition," screams one voice. "Can't break through," shouts another. Then silence as American Hellcats methodically destroy his carefully planned raid. Lieutenant Stanley Vrachyiu of the Lexington becomes the day's highest scorer, shooting down 6 Japanese aircraft in a single engagement. As he lines up his first target, a dive bomber approaching at low level, he radios back to his carrier. "Don't see how we can possibly shoot them all down. Too many." But that's exactly what happens. The Japanese formation, trained to fight individual duels against maneuverable opponents, encounters a wall of heavily armed American fighters that tear through their ranks with mechanical precision. Vrachyiu splashes 5 dive bombers in rapid succession, his aircraft shuddering under the recoil of 6 50 caliber machine guns. The few Japanese aircraft that survive the fighter screen face an even more terrifying challenge: Vice Admiral Willis Lee's battle line of battleships and cruisers. As the remaining enemy planes approach, American gunners unleash a curtain of anti-aircraft fire so dense it appears solid. 5-inch shells with proximity fuses explode in perfectly timed airburst patterns, creating a killing field that no aircraft can survive. On the Lexington's bridge, correspondent Noel Bush watches in fascination as tracers from 2 cruisers seem to grab a diving Japanese bomber like 2 arms reaching up. The aircraft simply disappears in a violent explosion, its fragments scattering across the ocean surface. Admiral Ozawa's second raid fares even worse. 128 aircraft launch from his carriers, but 8 must return immediately due to engine problems. As the formation passes over his own advance guard, trigger-happy gunners mistake them for American attackers and shoot down 2 more Japanese planes while damaging 8 others so severely they can't continue. The remaining aircraft encounter the same buzzsaw of American fighters that destroyed the first raid. This time, Lieutenant Don Gordon of the Lexington demonstrates the technological gap between Japanese and American naval aviation. Spotting 4 Japanese torpedo bombers flying at 15,000 feet, he ignores their Zero escorts and dives straight into the formation. Gordon's first burst of gunfire sends 1 torpedo bomber cartwheeling into the sea. He pursues the others as they take evasive action, methodically shooting down 2 more aircraft, while American anti-aircraft fire from the ships below creates towering waterspouts around him. The 4th Japanese pilot, apparently having seen enough, flees toward the horizon. By 11:30 a.m., Admiral Ozawa's first 2 raids have been annihilated. Of 197 aircraft committed to battle, only 31 returned to their carriers. The Americans have lost exactly 22 planes, most to operational accidents rather than enemy action. But Ozawa refuses to accept the evidence of disaster. He launches a 3rd raid of 47 aircraft, then a 4th with 82 planes. The results are catastrophic. More than half the pilots in the 3rd raid become lost and never find the American fleet, returning to their carriers without having fired a shot. The 4th raid flies directly into American fighters over Guam, where 30 Japanese aircraft are shot down in a matter of minutes. Red Landman watches the aftermath from Bunker Hill's flight deck as American pilots return from what they're already calling the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Hellcat after Hellcat touches down with victory rolls and triumphant radio calls. One pilot yells to his wingman, "Why hell? It was just like an old-time turkey shoot down home." The phrase spreads across the fleet within hours. In a single day, Admiral Ozawa has lost 374 of his 430 carrier aircraft. The cream of Japanese naval aviation destroyed in 4 waves of systematic slaughter. His remaining carriers steam back toward Japan as hollow shells, their flight decks empty, their purpose negated. But the day isn't over. At 3:32 p.m., a spark ignites aviation fuel vapors aboard Ozawa's flagship Taiho. The massive explosion tears through the carrier's hull, and within minutes she's sliding beneath the Pacific waves. 1,500 men go down with her, including many of the staff officers who planned this disastrous battle. An hour later, the veteran carrier Shokaku, survivor of Pearl Harbor and hero of early Japanese victories, takes 4 torpedo hits from the American submarine Kavala. More than 2,200 men die as she follows Taiho to the bottom. Admiral Ozawa, rescued by a destroyer, stares back at the oil slicks marking his sunken flagships. In a single day, he's lost 3 aircraft carriers, nearly 600 aircraft, and over 3,000 men. The American Essex carriers haven't suffered a single major hit. The Battle of the Philippine Sea is over, but its significance extends far beyond the immediate tactical results. Japanese naval aviation, the force that terrorized the Pacific in 1941 and 1942, has been destroyed as an effective fighting force. The pilots lost today cannot be replaced. The experience and expertise accumulated over decades of training has vanished beneath the Pacific swells. Admiral Ozawa writes in his flag log that evening, "Surviving carrier air power, 35 operational aircraft." It's the epitaph for Japanese naval aviation and the birth certificate of American naval supremacy in the Pacific. The Essex-class carriers have passed their ultimate test. They've faced the best Japan could offer and emerged victorious through superior technology, better trained pilots, and overwhelming industrial strength. From this moment forward, the Pacific belongs to America. The morning after the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, Red Landman stands on Bunker Hill's flight deck, watching the sun rise over a Pacific Ocean that has fundamentally changed. The wreckage of Japanese aircraft still floats on the swells. Fragments of wings, cockpit glass, and life jackets that tell the story of naval aviation's most decisive day. But for Landman and thousands of other Americans serving aboard Essex-class carriers, the real test still lies ahead. The Japanese may have lost their offensive capability, but they're about to discover new levels of desperation that will push American naval defenses to their limits. 11 months later, on May 11, 1945, Landman is working on an F-4 Yao Corsair in Bunker Hill's hangar bay when two Japanese kamikaze pilots sacrifice their lives in an attempt to sink his ship. The massive explosions kill 373 men and wound 264 more, casualties that would have sunk any lesser vessel. But the Essex-class design philosophy proves its worth in the flames and chaos that follow. "We didn't have time to think about it," Landman recalls decades later, his voice still steady despite the memories. "We lost almost 400 guys, but the ship, she never quit fighting." Bunker Hill's survival exemplifies the revolutionary durability that sets Essex-class carriers apart from their predecessors. While Japanese carriers prioritize speed and offensive power, American naval architects have built floating fortresses capable of absorbing tremendous punishment and continuing operations. The 4 inches of special treatment steel armor, compartmentalized design, and redundant systems allow Essex carriers to survive attacks that would cripple other ships. Even as kamikaze pilots crash into Essex-class flight decks throughout 1945, not a single carrier is lost. The Franklin suffers over 800 casualties when 2 bombs trigger catastrophic explosions among armed aircraft, but she returns to port under her own power. The Intrepid survives 4 separate kamikaze attacks, earning the nickname the Fighting Eye for her resilience. This durability reflects a fundamental difference in naval philosophy that Admiral Ozawa and his staff never fully understood. While Japanese designers focus on creating the most powerful possible attack platform, Americans build carriers designed to win prolonged campaigns through superior logistics and survivability. Each Essex-class ship carries enough aviation fuel, ammunition, and spare parts to conduct extended operations far from friendly bases. The Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944 demonstrates this strategic advantage on a massive scale. 4 Essex-class carriers, Essex, Franklin, Intrepid, and Cabot, participate in the largest naval battle in history, their aircraft helping to sink 26 Japanese warships, including the super battleship Musashi. Lieutenant Commander James Ramage, diving through heavy anti-aircraft fire to bomb Japanese carriers, watches his target burning from asshole to appetite, as his gunner so eloquently puts it. The sinking of Musashi, the largest and most heavily armed battleship ever built, by aircraft from Essex-class carriers, symbolizes the complete revolution in naval warfare that these ships represent. Battleships, once the ultimate expression of naval power, have become targets for carrier-based bombers operating from platforms that can move faster and strike farther than any gun-armed vessel. By war's end, the statistics tell a story of overwhelming American naval supremacy built on Essex-class foundations. 24 carriers completed between 1942 and 1950, participating in every major Pacific campaign from the Gilbert Islands to Okinawa. Their aircraft account for thousands of Japanese planes destroyed, hundreds of ships sunk, and countless ground targets neutralized. But the human cost of this technological triumph extends beyond American casualties to include the Japanese pilots who died in hopeless battles against superior opposition. Many of these young men, some with less than 6 months of training, never had a realistic chance of survival against American pilots with 2 years of intensive preparation flying superior aircraft. The Essex-class carriers continue serving long after Japan's surrender, their adaptable design allowing them to operate jet aircraft during the Korean War and early Vietnam conflict. The last of the class, USS Lexington, doesn't retire until 1991, nearly 50 years after the first ship entered service. 4 Essex-class carriers remain today as museum ships in New York, South Carolina, Texas, and California, testaments to the industrial might that won the Pacific War. Red Landman, who survived Bunker Hill's kamikaze attack and lived to age 100, represents the human face of this technological revolution. His Bronze Star citation reads simply, "For heroic achievement while serving aboard USS Bunker Hill during action against enemy Japanese forces." But the real heroism lies in the thousands of Americans who sailed these floating cities into harm's way, confident that American industrial might and technological superiority would see them through. The Essex-class carriers didn't just win the Pacific War. They redefined what it means to project naval power across vast ocean distances. Today's nuclear-powered supercarriers trace their lineage directly back to these revolutionary ships that taught the world a simple lesson. In modern warfare, the nation that can build the best technology fastest will ultimately prevail. The question Admiral Ozawa asked himself in defeat, "How do you fight an enemy with such overwhelming industrial capacity?" remains relevant today as nations compete for technological superiority in an increasingly complex world. What do you think? Could any Navy today match America's Essex-class production miracle of building 24 fleet carriers in 8 years? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of World War II's most decisive battles.